To truly understand the betrayal, you need the background. I was Crystal, 27, the cashier who worked nights and weekends at the grocery store. My sleeves were always rolled up, meticulously counting dollars toward the down payment on a tiny condo. I was building security, brick by hard-earned brick. And there was Andrew, my 30-year-old brother. He was charming, creative, and utterly financially toxic. Andrew never had savings because he spent money as fast as it arrived, usually chasing the next big, failed idea. He was digging a hole, and my parents, they saw his chaos as a romantic, entrepreneurial struggle. Crucially, they saw my hard-earned stability as an unlimited, readily available resource pool. This was the foundation of the problem. I'm Crystal Lewis, 27, a cashier in Minneapolis. Our family dinners were silent, which made my dad's casual whisper to Mom stand out. He glanced at me, completely sure I was oblivious. His topic, my savings, Dad stated it, clear as day, we'll use Crystal's entire savings. It's the easiest way to clear Andrew's debt before the deadline. She doesn't need it right now. The fork in my hand literally froze midair. They kept talking, Mom agreeing calmly to liquidate my condo fund to cover Andrew's latest screw-up. No asking. No hesitation. My entire savings, every extra shift, every sacrifice was just a communal piggy bank to them. I felt a cold knot of betrayal form in my stomach. But why did I even feel surprised? What was my money really for in their eyes? I was the default responsible one, the one who patched holes last-minute utility bills, co-signing small loans. My sole rewards for this exhausting role were silence and the temporary absence of a looming crisis. Andrew, meanwhile, was the struggling son who was always meticulously shielded. No matter how deep his debt grew, my parents protected him from all negative consequences. His troubles were instantly excused, mine were simply expected. The love felt profoundly unequal, and so did the expectations. I realized my personal goals, the condo, the hard-won independence, were completely invisible to them. They only truly saw me as an extension of their ability to manage Andrew's chronic irresponsibility. That dinner whisper confirmed it. My financial security wasn't even considered my own possession. I was just part of the family property. But what happens when the responsible one finally gathers the strength to say a decisive, irrevocable no? Saving wasn't a chore, it was a craft. I treated every dollar like a valuable resource. Budgets weren't limits, they were blueprints for my freedom. I used coupons like a strategist and logged extra shifts like a scientist. It was a quiet, internal passion. Every dollar saved was a brick. Every completed budget was a wall going up between my past and my future. I was building a safe space, literally and metaphorically. The condo wasn't just property, it was ownership over my own life, a place where my choices mattered most. Nobody in my family saw this as a passion. They saw it as being cheap. But to me, this self-reliance was the most beautiful thing I had ever created. It was a quiet rebellion, a secret dream fueled by the desire for true independence. Honestly, Crystal, you're too tight with money. You work so hard, why are you denying yourself everything? Just spend a little for goodness sake. My financial discipline, which built my future, was recast as a character flaw. My self-control was their disappointment. Meanwhile, when Andrew, 30, blew his paycheck on an impulse trip to Vegas, it wasn't a failure. It was finding himself or learning a hard lesson. He was protected from consequence by a cushion of parental anxiety. I was judged by a standard of perfect self-sufficiency. The double standard didn't just hurt, it was physically heavy. Their expectations created an invisible backpack I had to carry everywhere. My quiet determination was deemed selfish, his financial irresponsibility was met with endless grace. But how long can one person carry everything before they finally break? I lived on a cycle of deliberate effort. I meal prepped bland, cheap food not out of preference but necessity. Every calorie counted, every penny saved. I biked to work in snow and rain, stacking overtime hours that felt like bricks of gold in my savings account. After my cashier shift ended, my second shift began. I didn't watch TV. I studied tenant laws and investment basics on my tiny laptop until 1 a.m. I wasn't just saving money, I was investing in knowledge, ensuring that when I finally bought a place, I couldn't be easily cheated. This quiet discipline received no applause. My parents only saw the lack of spontaneity, not the massive, focused effort behind it. But the internal satisfaction was my fuel. I was earning my independence one long, unseen hour at a time. I hit my savings goal. The condo fund finally reached that magic number. It was the result of years of silent, relentless self-discipline. I waited for a well done, a high five, maybe a cake. Instead, I got the classic response it was expected. "That's good, honey. Now you can stop focusing on yourself for a bit. Andrew really needs our help with his unexpected credit card situation." My achievement was merely a prerequisite for my next obligation. It wasn't a finish line, it was a starting gun for Andrew's rescue mission. Every step forward I took was calculated into a silent tax on my independence. Andrew's choices, his debt, his lack of planning, they all became my obligation. I realized then that my parents didn't want me to succeed, they wanted me to be securely available to stabilize their favorite son. This realization was a bitter pill. My worth was conditional on my usefulness to Andrew. Approval wasn't earned, it was indefinitely deferred. The quiet sacrifice wasn't enough. I needed a new lifeline, a new mentor to show me how to protect what I'd earned. But where would that guidance come from? My mind was a tangled knot of budgets and resentment. I was reviewing my spreadsheet in the break room when Maria, a senior coworker, noticed my frustration. Maria had an air of calm confidence. She was successful, but more importantly, she looked effortlessly at peace. "That cycle won't stop. Crystal, you're the emergency fund. They'll keep calling it love, but it's financial enablement disguised as family obligation." Hearing those words, financial enablement, out loud was like a cold splash of water. It was the truth I couldn't admit to myself. Here is the key to breaking free. Remember this: help with options, not your bank account. It's loving, but it's not enabling. That phrase landed in my mind like a lifeline. It wasn't about being selfish, it was about defining where my responsibility ended. Maria didn't just offer advice, she offered a blueprint for freedom. She showed me that boundaries weren't walls to push people away, but fences to protect my future. Her guidance was the spark. I finally saw a way to achieve my condo dream without becoming a permanent financial casualty. The power dynamic was about to shift. I had the knowledge, now I just needed the courage to execute the plan. Maria's advice gave me the courage to act. My first move, I opened a separate, dedicated Freedom Fund account at a different bank. I automated deposits so my money vanished before I or anyone else could reconsider. Financial security became invisible. Having Maria as a confidante was everything. She replaced the familiar guilt with validation and tactical praise. She affirmed my right to self-preservation. With her support, the old voices of family doubt started to dim. I wasn't being selfish, I was being a responsible adult. I contacted a mortgage broker. It felt like walking onto a battlefield after years of training. The fear was huge, but the desire for my own front door was bigger. Every document submitted, every question answered, was an act of defiance against the narrative that I belonged to them. Then the email came. Pre-approval successful. I sat in my car, shaking. It wasn't just a loan, it was the formal validation of my future. I had done it alone, against the current of my family's expectation. The weight of years lifted in one glorious, electronic notification. I had the power now. But I knew the closer I got to closing, the more desperately my family would try to reclaim their asset. The closing date was set. I taped the checklist to the fridge, marking off items like a child counting down to Christmas. My realtor texted, Only 2 weeks left. The dream felt real, tangible. I had done it. I was finally claiming my own piece of Minneapolis. I verified the funds in my separate accounts safe, locked down, and untouched. Maria's voice was in my head. Protect your earnest money, Crystal. That account was the armored vault of my autonomy. It was the only thing standing between me and a lifetime of obligation. That Sunday, the scent of pot roast and gravy was familiar. Crystal relaxed, allowing herself to enjoy the false comfort of routine before her big move. She walked into the kitchen, the closing checklist documents folded neatly in her jacket pocket, ready to share the good news. His loan shark deadline is Friday. We just need the savings cleared tomorrow. Tell the broker Crystal is putting off the condo. She'll understand. Crystal froze. Not just an idea, an active, imminent plan to steal her future. And the casual certainty that she'll understand. They weren't just discussing money. They were discussing property rights over my life. My savings were their insurance policy against Andrew's failures. They planned to sacrifice my biggest milestone, my first real taste of freedom, without a single word to me. The debt collector called again. Mom, I told you I'm trying to work on it. His trying was about to cost me everything. He was blissfully unaware that his reckless choices were being paid for with my sweat equity and sacrifice. That was the line. They saw me as a resource, not a person. The shock wore off, replaced by a cold, absolute fury. I wasn't going to let them simply walk into the bank and liquidate my future. This was the moment I had to speak my truth. The entire room went silent as Crystal stepped forward, the closing documents clenched like a shield. What happens when the responsible one finally says no? This was the last family dinner before the final, explosive confrontation. I heard that. Stop. My savings are not available for Andrew's debt. I am closing on my condo in 2 weeks. The sound of my own voice, firm and uncompromising, felt unfamiliar. It cut through the comfortable silence of their entitled planning. Oh, sweetie, don't be dramatic. It's just a temporary loan. We'll pay you back. Family helps family. You don't need that condo right now. My years of sacrifice were reduced to a minor inconvenience in their master plan. My dream was nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. You will do this, Crystal. Your fund is sitting there idle. Andrew needs the capital, you just need a cheaper place. It's for the family, not your ego. My money was family property. My future was their emergency piggy bank. The heat rose in my chest, not of shame, but of absolute, justified rage. Yeah, Crystal, you're always so uptight about money. It's not like you're buying a mansion. Just save up again. It'll take you 2 years max. His flippant comment summarized my life. Years of work erased by a single, casual sentence. The total disregard for my effort was the sharpest cut. In that instant, every ounce of filial duty, every desire for their approval, simply evaporated. The heat of my anger cooled into a cold, rational resolve. They weren't fighting for Andrew, they were fighting to maintain the system that controlled me. And that system just failed. I understand perfectly. And the answer is no. The money is committed. I am not liquidating my life for your convenience. The refusal hung in the air, heavy and solid. It was the first time I had used my financial power as a shield, not a resource for them to exploit. You can't talk to your mother like that. We raised you. You owe us. The debt was finally settled. I owed them nothing more than polite distance. The years of being the fixer and the forgotten were over. The room was charged with silent fury. Crystal had refused to fund another rescue. Her emotional life was in ruins, but her financial future was secure. The rejection and humiliation had been the final, necessary catalyst for true independence. Let me be perfectly clear, my savings are mine. They are already legally committed to a binding purchase agreement. I cannot and will not fund another rescue. The word legally was the armor I desperately needed. It shifted the debate from family emotion to concrete fact. You are talking nonsense. Andrew is your brother. We are your parents. "This condo is not happening. Call your broker now and cancel it." They didn't see a daughter making a life decision, they saw an employee disobeying an order. Their entitlement was blinding. "Just tell them you lost your job. No big deal." His casual suggestion to commit fraud for his convenience confirmed everything Maria had taught me. He didn't just want my money, he wanted my integrity too. He wanted me to dismantle my entire self-worth for him. "No, I spent years building this. You spent years bailing him out. I am taking responsibility for my life. It's time he took responsibility for his." This wasn't revenge, it was self-rescue. I was drawing the final line, choosing the hard truth over the easy enabling. How can you be so cruel? This is what family means, Crystal. We'll be ruined. I saw the manipulation clearly. I learned true love sets boundaries. False love demands sacrifices. I refused to internalize their panic. "I've given you options before. Andrew needs job training, not cash. The answer is permanent. I will not be funding Andrew. That money is now a down payment." I finally understood. Offering them a fish would mean they came back tomorrow. Teaching them to fish meant I was finally free. Their shouts of "ungrateful" faded behind me. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I was walking away intact, with my future secure. I chose my dream over their system. I chose independence over their manipulation. I chose me. The quiet solitude of her car was deafening. The cost of her freedom was the fracture of her family, a cost paid in tears, but necessary for her survival. She wept for the family she wished she had, but she drove toward the condo she had actually earned. I texted Maria a simple message: "I did it. I secured my savings and refused the bailout." The hardest part of the war was over, but the retaliation was guaranteed. They wouldn't let their source of free money just walk away without a fight. The phone buzzed relentlessly. They had moved from confrontation to panic calls. Crystal silenced her phone, feeling the coldness of their entitlement. She knew the coming week would be brutal. The manipulation was far from finished. Crystal had won the battle for her finances, but could she survive the emotional warfare that was about to follow? Could she hold her ground when the only leverage they had left was guilt? The closing was set, but the cost was still being calculated. The air was thick with unspoken threats. The family meeting wasn't a discussion, it was an intervention they thought they were controlling. Crystal knew better. They wanted to break her resolve with guilt. She was there to deliver a corporate announcement. "I brought documentation to settle this. Your loan request is denied. My finances are no longer liquid." She placed a copy of the purchase agreement and the earnest money receipt face up. Irrevocable. Final. "What is this? You signed this after we told you no? You committed our family's money to this little apartment." He didn't see my hard work. He saw his control slipping away. His anger was proof I was finally doing the right thing for me. "It's not final, Dad. She can back out. She'll lose the earnest money, but it's what? A couple grand. Worth it to save my credit." The casual dismissal of my $5,000 deposit, my months of sacrifice, was his final, callous act of entitlement. He expected my loss. "Crystal, please. Think about us. You're breaking your father's heart. We need this. You are doing this just to hurt us." I stared back, completely numb. I was fighting for my survival, but they had to make it about their feelings, their pain. "I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because I'm the only one here who works. The condo is moving forward. My money is gone." The silence that followed was the sound of a system collapsing. The worker bee had left the hive, and the queen and drones were left stranded. The reality sank in. Crystal's independence wasn't a threat to her, it was a death sentence for their comfort. The emergency fund was closed. Andrew, suddenly vulnerable, looked terrified, realizing he'd lost his human ATM. I had won the negotiation because I presented fact, not emotion. The purchase agreement was an undeniable proof of my self-worth. I walked out of that house and into my future, a future that was finally completely my own. The financial war was over, but the family war, the emotional war, had just begun. The day of the closing. The silence from my family was more chilling than their shouting. I drove alone, my heart pounding, expecting one last desperate attempt to sabotage my future. Years of being the family's safety net had conditioned me to believe my happiness was an unaffordable luxury. The atmosphere at the title company was the antithesis of her home. Her realtor, David, greeted her warmly, and Maria was there, too, offering a tight, supportive hug. It was a small, earned family built on respect and mutual understanding. They saw my struggle, but they chose to celebrate my triumph. Crystal, I have to say your financial discipline is incredible. You're 27, and you bought this place on your own. That's real grit. That honest, external validation hit me harder than any of my mother's harsh words. Someone finally saw the effort, not the dollar amount. You didn't just buy a condo, sweetie. You bought freedom from a cycle. You bought the right to say no without guilt. This was the true emotional climax. Maria put into words the profound change. I was no longer bound by their fear or their debt. I signed my name one last time. Each stroke of the pen wasn't just a legal action, it was a declaration of independence. The condo was titled solely in my name. No co-signers, no co-owners, just me and my future. David handed her the keys. The weight of the metal was the heaviest, most wonderful thing she'd ever held. They weren't just keys, they were the keys to her own life. Crystal looked down at them and quietly started to cry, not tears of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated triumph. Standing inside, the emptiness was beautiful. It was a blank slate, a place where no family debt or expectation could enter without my permission. The silence was restorative. It was the first time in my life I had a space that was truly and unequivocally mine. My parents wanted me to understand their pain, but all I felt was the unbreakable peace of earned independence. The greatest revenge wasn't a malicious act, it was simply succeeding without them. Crystal had the key. Now it was time to lock the door on her past. The game was about to change. The day I moved out was a non-event for them. I rented a small truck and hauled my few belongings alone. They offered no help, only silent, heavy blame. They wanted me to feel the full weight of my decision, but all I felt was the weight of freedom. Her mother watched from the kitchen window, her face a mask of disappointment. Her father read the paper, pretending the driveway wasn't emptying. Andrew didn't even lift his head from the TV. My departure was just a minor, temporary inconvenience to his leisure. I paused at my bedroom door. All the years of hoping for validation, of working twice as hard, it had all happened right here. It was a strange mix of sadness and profound relief. I wasn't leaving a home, I was leaving a prison of obligation. Don't bother calling until you change your mind. Andrew might lose his car this week. You could have fixed this. She still saw me as the fix, the financial bandage. Her last words to me were a blunt instrument of emotional warfare. Andrew is responsible for his car. Goodbye, Mom. No hug, no well wishes, just the sharp click of the truck door. The coldness of the farewell was the final confirmation. This wasn't a temporary break, this was a permanent, necessary divorce. I drove toward the condo, leaving the past in the rearview mirror. The road ahead felt vast, empty, and unburdened by debt or guilt. My success was mixed with an emptiness for the family I lost, but the condo represented the family I saved, myself. I was now the sole owner of my space, my silence, and my success. The quiet of my new apartment was a powerful, cleansing reward. The emptiness wasn't lonely, it was a canvas for a life finally painted by my own hand, not theirs. I owed my sanity and this apartment to Maria. She showed me that the greatest power is not in the money, but in the boundaries. The revenge wasn't in punishing them, it was in thriving without them. Crystal had closed the door on the old cycle. Now begins the resolution. The guilt trips had failed. Now came the silence, followed by the inevitable pleading. I needed one last item from the house closure. I drove back, not as their daughter, but as a visitor delivering a final, brutal invoice. Crystal, thank God you're here. We need to talk. Andrew is going to lose everything. You can still transfer the down payment. The guilt had been weaponized again. It was the same old script, but this time I had the power to rewrite the ending. Let's skip the begging. You keep saying I owe you, that I must help my brother. But what if I told you I don't owe you anything? My mother's face went white. She knew exactly which debt I was referring to, the debt of hidden truths. You remember the safe deposit box you forgot to close? The one I handled after Grandma passed? You should have shredded these. She revealed 2 documents, an old handwritten letter from the grandmother and a sealed medical file. The medical file is a paternity test. It confirms what Grandma wrote in her letter. Andrew is not your son, Dad. The air fractured. Andrew looked confused. My father turned to my mother, his face a mask of white-hot betrayal. It was a mistake. Years ago. We agreed to never speak of it. Don't do this, Crystal. You're ruining him. Her hysteria wasn't for her husband or her son. It was for the collapse of her carefully constructed lie. And now you know the truth about why you were always the favorite, Andrew. Not because you were better, but because you were better. The endless enabling wasn't love, it was guilt, disguised as unconditional parenting. I was just the convenient alibi. All these years, every debt, every job, every excuse, and you aren't even mine. You let me pay for his failure. The foundation of his life, his identity as Andrew's selfless father, shattered instantly. The focus shifted entirely from Crystal to the original sin. So no, Mom, I won't liquidate my future for Andrew's past. I owe you nothing. In fact, you owe me decades of honesty. She looked at her father, then her mother, and finally her brother. Her face was a blank slate of finality. Is that true, Mom? Is it? You lied my whole life? So I'm not even. Why did you wait until I was ruined to tell me? The secret had finally turned on the person it was meant to protect. The guilt was finally transferred to the right shoulders. Crystal walked out, leaving 3 broken figures behind. Her exit was silent, definitive. The years of servitude were paid in full. The condo was the material freedom. This revelation was the emotional freedom. The revenge was complete. The father, the victim of his wife's lie, was now doubly isolated, betrayed by his wife and rejected by the daughter who was truly his. He had sacrificed the loyalty of his real child to protect the secret of the child who wasn't. Don't touch me. You let me believe him. You made me a fraud. The mother lost both her husband and her favorite son in a single, devastating moment. The price of maintaining the lie was the destruction of the entire family unit. I had won. I had the condo, the truth, and my freedom. But the silence in my car was heavy, not with triumph, but with loss. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it leaves an aftertaste of loneliness. I was free, but I was also truly alone. The past was finally closed. The family was a memory. Now I could focus on building a life where honesty and respect were the foundations. The space in my heart that used to hold hope for their approval was now filled with self-worth. The ultimate lesson: never let someone else's shame become your life's responsibility. My independence was the final, definitive victory. The condo was just brick and mortar. The peace of mind was priceless. Crystal walked away from the destruction she created, but what happened to the Lewis family system after its biggest secret was weaponized? Did Andrew hit rock bottom? And would Crystal ever find a way to reconcile with the heartbroken father who was truly her own? Andrew's text was his last, desperate attempt to regain control. You lose the rest of it. The ultimate manipulator, trying to weaponize my father and my money one last time. He couldn't threaten me emotionally anymore, so he targeted the one thing I'd started to rebuild, my relationship with Dad. I was no longer the little sister who rushed to fix things. I had initiated legal action. I didn't need his information, but I wanted the full truth before the lawyers finalized the case. He wanted a meeting, he would get one. But it would be on my turf, on my terms, and on my schedule. Public location. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. No mom. No dad. No negotiation. Send location now. I didn't ask a question. I stated the facts. The power had officially shifted, and Andrew knew it. His final attempt at control had failed. He was a messenger of information, nothing more. I was walking into the lion's den one last time, but this time I was carrying the tranquilizer gun. I chose the busiest spot in the city. Public eyes meant safety. Andrew walked in haggard, but still wearing that arrogant twitch of control. He was playing the victim one last time. I didn't stand up. I didn't offer a greeting. I just pointed at the empty chair. 2 minutes, Andrew. Crystal, thank you for coming. I know you're mad, but I did this for your own good. Mom and Dad were going to ruin you. The same old defense. Blame the victim, play the savior. I let the hypocrisy hang in the air, waiting for the actual pitch. The rest of the money, Dad knows the location of the original inheritance vault. He kept the key. If you prosecute, he'll burn it all. The classic villain move, the final, desperate, non-verifiable secret. He was trying to buy immunity with a lie. Andrew, stop! You sent me the letter to trigger me. It failed. I am already pursuing criminal action based on your documented confession. I had learned the rules of the game. Don't negotiate with terrorists. I had the truth, and he had nothing but empty threats. But Dad, he'll go to jail, Crystal. You can't do that to him. He's not involved. It was Mom and me. He was forced. He tried to weaponize the only remaining vulnerability, my tentative connection with my father. But my father had already chosen honesty. The lawyers will deal with the who was forced debate. I have your confession. You have one choice, full, documented restitution. That's all. He was demanding emotion. I gave him contracts and legal terms. That was the only language I was willing to speak now. This is not over, Crystal. You think you won, but you ruined the family. You're just as toxic. His defeat wasn't quiet. It was a loud, final attempt to inflict pain. I let him scream. His anger was simply the sound of the old system breaking. I was already gone. He could yell toxic all he wanted. Choosing self-preservation over family destruction is not toxicity, it's sanity. I had made my final statement by leaving. I walked out of the cafe and out of their lives. The door to my past finally slammed shut, softly and definitively. Meeting complete. Andrew confirmed Mom and Dad were involved in the trust fund theft. Proceed with all actions. I had the legal proof and the emotional closure. I had taken back every single dollar, and my dignity was priceless. The revenge wasn't the lawsuit, it was the unshakable peace I found in my condo. I had won the battle for my money, but more importantly, the war for my mind. The Lewis family chaos was finally just a bad story I used to tell. Now, I was ready to write the next chapter. I looked at the legal papers, then at my wife. The harsh truth was simple. I had spent decades protecting the wrong person. My choice to stay silent was now destroying my daughter. The house was quiet, but the silence wasn't peace. It was the sound of a family completely broken by its own lies, whispering, pleading, trying to regain control. She tried to blame Crystal, to blame Andrew, to blame everyone but herself. But I saw her face clearly for the first time, pure, terrified selfishness. I couldn't protect her anymore. Protecting her meant destroying the last shred of my own dignity and losing Crystal forever. The choice wasn't between my wife and my daughter, it was between the lie and the truth. Andrew's letter about the vault was a threat, but it was also a warning. I walked past her. I left the house, leaving behind the wreckage of 20 years of cowardice. The debt I owed Crystal wasn't financial, it was moral. I drove to the public phone booth to call her lawyer. My last act would be to confirm the theft and ensure the truth was finally revealed. I wasn't seeking forgiveness, I was seeking accountability. Crystal had won her freedom, and I had finally earned the right to face the consequences. The news came from Maria later that day. My father had provided the final, damning evidence. The revenge wasn't the pain I caused them, but the peace I found for myself. The Lewis family saga was over. My journey from victim to victor was complete. Justice was finally served. My father's call to the lawyer was the final nail in the coffin of their lies. It proved that not everyone was willing to burn just to keep the secret. Justice was moving forward. The legal battle was Maria's now. My part of the revenge was finished. I had chosen my peace over their chaos. I used to carry the weight of their potential destruction. Now, that burden was gone. My freedom was not the absence of trouble, but the absence of responsibility for their trouble. The hardest thing I ever did was standing up to my family, but it was the only way to finally sit down and breathe. The true revenge wasn't seeing them lose money or face legal consequences. It was knowing that my grandmother's memory had finally been honored by the return of her stolen funds. I had changed the story. I was no longer the victim of the Lewis family. I was the protector of the Lewis family truth. My father and I weren't whole, but we were healing. He had chosen accountability over comfort, the first truly selfless choice he'd made in years. He was facing the consequences, not running from them. That was the only kind of relationship I was willing to build from now on. Weeks later, the final paperwork arrived. Restitution had been secured, and the civil case was over. The Lewis family saga was officially archived, not active. I had won everything I had fought for: my money, my home, and the silence from my past. My new apartment wasn't just a home. It was a monument to self-respect. It taught me that the only way to break a toxic cycle is to walk away, fully and finally. The Lewis family might never change, but I had. My revenge was the life I built without them. If you're stuck in a family revenge story, remember this: the best revenge is not destruction, but reconstruction. Reconstruct your boundaries, your dignity, and your life. But what about the father's future? Did he ever reconcile with Crystal, or did his final choice cost him everything? The civil suit was settled, but the legal fees and the restitution demand meant the house was gone. They were left with nothing but the debt of their deception. This was the inevitable end when the entire structure was built on fraud and emotional blackmail. You sent that letter. You destroyed us, Andrew. If you had kept your mouth shut, we would have been fine. I told her because I wanted it to stop. I didn't steal from Grandma. You did, Mom. You and Dad, it doesn't matter. Crystal did this. She wanted revenge. She never loved us. She was never a real Lewis. She was always too righteous. Their final act of unity was deflecting all responsibility onto the person who finally demanded honesty. Where is your father, Andrew? He ran. He left me. He chose her. My father had gone into isolation. He needed to find his own truth, away from her noise. His absence was his loudest, most powerful statement. He had finally left the sinking ship. We never stood a chance. The entire thing was rigged from the start. They refused to see the real enemy was their own entitlement and lies. They blamed the system of truth that exposed them. They would never reconcile or forgive each other, only continue to seek a convenient scapegoat. My father lost his home, his marriage, and his remaining money. But in that loss, he gained something invaluable: the clarity to apologize. He had paid the true price. His final surrender to the truth meant that, unlike the others, he was not beyond saving. I never saw my mother or Andrew again. They were consumed by their own toxicity. Their punishment wasn't external, it was internal. They were locked in a constant loop of denial and resentment. That was their Lewis family legacy. I understand why you did what you did. You showed me the way out. Thank you, Crystal. I love you. His letter was the real recovery. No money, no property, just two people starting over, focusing on truth and respect. He never asked for help, only for understanding. And that small exchange was more valuable than any inheritance. The biggest lesson of my revenge wasn't justice for the past, but peace for the future. Sometimes you have to break the lock to free yourself from the cage. My story proves that toxic family control only works if you agree to participate. I finally had the space to rebuild my career, my relationships, and my trust. The Lewis family saga was over, replaced by the Crystal story. The ultimate revenge is living well. The ultimate peace is knowing you defined your own ending. While my father moved toward accountability, my mother and brother remained fixed in the cycle of blame. They never learned that consequences are not punishment, but reality. Their story ended in chaos. Mine ended in a quiet, unshakable victory. My father and I slowly rebuilt trust, one simple phone call at a time. It wasn't the old relationship, but a new one, founded on his hard-won truth. He never asked for help, only for understanding. And that small exchange was more valuable than any inheritance. Andrew was last seen moving out of state, still convinced he was the victim. He would spend his life searching for money and a new family to blame. He was never free. The ultimate price he paid was never having to face himself. My mother remained in the wreckage, isolated, still trying to manipulate people with her crisis. But the audience was gone. Her tragic performance had run its course. She was left alone with the ghosts of her own making. I fought for my independence and I won. If you're struggling to break free, remember this: your peace is worth the fight. Your story is yours to write. I took back my inheritance, but I gained my entire future. Crystal's journey proves that the best revenge is radical self-respect. Tell us, what was the greatest emotional cost of her victory? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of victims becoming victors. My family taught me the meaning of betrayal, but they also taught me the true value of boundaries. The physical distance allowed me to see their actions without their distortion. I was finally able to grieve the life I thought I had and celebrate the life I actually built. The end of the Lewis saga was simply the beginning of mine. I couldn't have won this battle alone. Maria wasn't just my lawyer, she was the first truly honest person I had allowed into my life in years. She was my unwavering ally. She provided the legal armor that let me face their emotional warfare without breaking. You stood up for yourself, Crystal. I just handled the paperwork. This win is yours and your grandmother's. Maria understood that family wasn't about blood, it was about mutual respect and protection. I finally learned that choosing people who see your worth is more powerful than fighting people who deny it. Beyond Maria, there were old friends who reminded me of who I was before the Lewis chaos. They were my emotional lifeline. True recovery isn't done in isolation. It's done with the help of those who refuse to let you fall. I got my money back, yes, but the real wealth was the non-monetary investment I made in myself, therapy, boundaries, and cutting off the toxic source. The peace in this apartment was worth more than a dozen trust funds. This space was mine, uncontaminated by their deceit. I had moved on. My anger was replaced by pity for those still trapped in the blame game. Even my father's choice, though late, was a chance at a new beginning. I had found the path from revenge to healing. The door was closed on the family, but the door to my future was wide open. The ultimate lesson: don't wait for your toxic family to change. Change yourself and change your environment. That's how you win. Do you think Crystal should have reconciled with her father? Tell us in the comments. With the financial chaos gone, I poured my reclaimed energy into my career. I launched my consulting firm, The Crystal Project. The name was intentional, it was about clarity and self-definition. My focus shifted from surviving family politics to thriving in my professional life. Success was the best, most beautiful form of revenge. Every deposit was a monument to my strength. The money recovered from the trust fund didn't make me rich, but it made me secure. Financial independence meant I never had to rely on a family that could be bought or manipulated again. I replaced anxiety with routine, chaos with calm. These new rituals were my armor against the past. I was learning to be happy without constant drama. The empty space where the guilt used to live was now filled with self-acceptance and peace. My father and I spoke sometimes, short calls focused on the present. He never mentioned my mother or Andrew. He focused on his small, hard-won sobriety. It was a fragile connection not based on love, but on respect for the truth. That was enough for both of us. I lost everything, but I gained the ability to look at myself in the mirror. Crystal taught me that some relationships cannot be saved, only redefined by honesty. He was finally free of the financial and emotional bondage of my mother's demands. I learned to appreciate simple things: a well-cooked meal, a loyal friend, a good night's sleep without fear. These were the true spoils of victory. The luxury of my new life wasn't the square footage, it was the safety and authenticity of the people around me. My journey was not just a revenge story, it was a blueprint for escape. It taught me that when a family tries to break you, the most powerful move is to rebuild yourself stronger, elsewhere. I was finally Crystal Lewis, defined by my choices, not my bloodline. That was the end of the Lewis family saga. Crystal not only recovered her fortune but forged her future. She traded toxic loyalty for absolute freedom, proving that accountability is the foundation of recovery. The Lewis family might remain a story of destruction, but Crystal became a testament to self-rescue. If you are ready to reclaim your life from toxic family dynamics, know that it's possible. Your voice is your most powerful weapon. Use it. Her vulnerability had become her strength, transforming her trauma into inspiration for millions. I learned to trust my gut, not my blood. I had chosen a difficult path, but it was the only one that led to authentic happiness. My future wasn't inherited, it was earned. I wouldn't trade that victory for anything. While Crystal thrived, her mother remained isolated, still waiting for the world to apologize. The blame game was her prison. The Lewis family became a footnote in Crystal's biography, a dark chapter she finally closed. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't the end of your life, it's the beginning. The revenge was simply the door, and the new life was the reward. This is my story. This is how I built my new life, brick by brick, choice by choice. Crystal's story is proof that you can sever the chain of dysfunction and still choose love, on your own terms. Now, share your story of breaking free in the comments below. I look back at the young woman who was so afraid of disappointing her parents, even though they were actively stealing from her. I wish I could tell her sooner that the fear of conflict is more damaging than the conflict itself. My revenge wasn't loud or flashy, it was simply the act of correcting a massive, decades-long wrong. I didn't destroy my family, I simply refused to let them destroy me anymore. The Lewis family narrative is over. The Crystal Project is just beginning. I never spoke to my mother or Andrew again. The silence was the final, necessary consequence of their choices. It wasn't hatred, it was the quiet mourning of a relationship that died long ago. I finally accepted that I couldn't save them. I could only save myself from them. Andrew vanished into the background noise of life. He was still trying to escape the financial and legal wreckage he created. The ultimate tragedy was his inability to connect his pain to his actions. He was forever stuck in the victim narrative he had carefully constructed. My mother lost her audience. Without a victim or an audience, her manipulation lost its power. She was left alone with the unraveling narrative of her own life. Her punishment was simply the loss of control and the truth of her solitude. The emotional cost of victory was recognizing that the family I needed never existed. It cost me the illusion of belonging, but the price was worth the prize: unconditional self-respect. I traded a fake family for real freedom. That exchange defined my life going forward. Clear air here, trying to be honest now. No demands. His effort was small but genuine. He was the only one who showed a willingness to rebuild on the foundation of truth. My relationship with him was a quiet, guarded reconciliation, focused only on the path ahead. The biggest tool of my revenge wasn't the lawsuit, it was the boundary. No contact meant no vulnerability. It was the only way to ensure they could never hijack my future again. My freedom was self-enforced, self-funded, and absolutely non-negotiable. I often looked out at the city. It represented endless potential, free from the shadow of my childhood home. Every success was a direct consequence of my courage. The old ties were cooled, but my new life was burning bright. My new family wasn't defined by shared DNA, but by shared values. Maria, my friends, even my quiet calls with my father, this was the true inheritance. I learned that you are not obligated to accept the title of family if the behavior is destructive. The Lewis saga was over, but my recovery journey was permanent. I continued therapy, not to fix the past, but to ensure I never repeated its patterns. The revenge was the ignition, but the building of the new life was the real drive. If your family is the source of your pain, you have the right and the responsibility to close that chapter. Don't let guilt be the anchor that keeps you sinking. Stand up for your life, even if you have to stand up alone. Crystal's freedom was earned through honesty. Andrew and his mother's freedom was simply the isolation of their denial. They were still serving a sentence, the one they imposed on themselves. Crystal found peace. They found only the echo of their own resentment. The name Lewis no longer held power over me. It was simply a legal identifier. My identity was forged in the battle for my self-worth, not the bloodline I shared. I was defined by my recovery, my boundaries, and my unbreakable peace. The truth won. I got my money back, I got my life back, and I got the final, priceless gift of clarity. But what about the other victims of toxic family systems? Could they find the same peace as Crystal? The revenge served its purpose. It was the necessary mechanism to sever the cord. But the true story is in the building, in the quiet, everyday choices to choose health over drama, truth over loyalty, and self over system. That is the real victory. It's not just about winning the lawsuit, it's about winning your life. My mother and brother are distant memories now, and I'm thankful for the distance. It is my greatest boundary and my most cherished peace. I never spoke to my mother or Andrew again. The silence was the final, necessary consequence of their choices. It wasn't hatred, it was the quiet mourning of a relationship that died long ago. I finally accepted that I couldn't save them. I could only save myself from them. Andrew vanished into the background noise of life. He was still trying to escape the financial and legal wreckage he created. The ultimate tragedy was his inability to connect his pain to his actions. He was forever stuck in the victim narrative he had carefully constructed. My mother lost her audience. Without a victim or an audience, her manipulation lost its power. She was left alone with the unraveling narrative of her own life. Her punishment was simply the loss of control and the truth of her solitude. The emotional cost of victory was recognizing that the family I needed never existed. It cost me the illusion of belonging, but the price was worth the prize, unconditional self-respect. I traded a fake family for real freedom. That exchange defined my life going forward. Clear air here. Trying to be honest now. No demands. His effort was small, but genuine. He was the only one who showed a willingness to rebuild on the foundation of truth. My relationship with him was a quiet, guarded reconciliation, focused only on the path ahead. The biggest tool of my revenge wasn't the lawsuit, it was the boundary. No contact meant no vulnerability. It was the only way to ensure they could never hijack my future again. My freedom was self-enforced, self-funded, and absolutely non-negotiable. I often looked out at the city. It represented endless potential, free from the shadow of my childhood home. Every success was a direct consequence of my courage. The old ties were cooled, but my new life was burning bright. My new family wasn't defined by shared DNA, but by shared values. Maria, my friends, even my quiet calls with my father, this was the true inheritance. I learned that you are not obligated to accept the title of family if the behavior is destructive. The Lewis saga was over, but my recovery journey was permanent. I continued therapy, not to fix the past, but to ensure I never repeated its patterns. The revenge was the ignition, but the building of the new life was the real drive. If your family is the source of your pain, you have the right and the responsibility to close that chapter. I don't let guilt be the anchor that keeps you sinking. Stand up for your life, even if you have to stand up alone. Crystal's freedom was earned through honesty. Andrew and his mother's freedom was simply the isolation of their denial. They were still serving a sentence, the one they imposed on themselves. Crystal found peace. They found only the echo of their own resentment. The name Lewis no longer held power over me. It was simply a legal identifier. My identity was forged in the battle for my self-worth, not the bloodline I shared. I was defined by my recovery, my boundaries, and my unbreakable peace. The truth won. I got my money back, I got my life back, and I got the final, priceless gift of clarity. But what about the other victims of toxic family systems? Could they find the same peace as Crystal? The revenge served its purpose. It was the necessary mechanism to sever the cord. But the true story is in the building. In the quiet, everyday choices to choose health over drama, truth over loyalty, and self over system. That is the real victory. It's not just about winning the lawsuit, it's about winning your life. My mother and brother are distant memories now, and I'm thankful for the distance. It is my greatest boundary and my most cherished peace. We started this story with a betrayal and ended it with a triumph of the spirit. Crystal's revenge wasn't just about the money, it was about reclaiming the dignity that was systematically stolen. She proved that truth is the ultimate weapon against family gaslighting and deception. The most lasting lesson is the power of the boundary. No contact wasn't cruel, it was self-preservation. It was the decision to protect the peace she fought so hard to create. You are never obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm in their dysfunction. Her success wasn't the material wealth of the Lewis name. It was the ability to use her trauma for good. She traded silence for a microphone, fear for advocacy. The Lewis family failed to destroy her. Instead, they inadvertently created an advocate. And what of her father? His redemption wasn't full, but it was honest. He proved that even the most complicit can choose truth over comfort, a choice that ultimately cost him everything, yet saved his soul. His quiet attempt at reconciliation was the only Lewis tie that didn't snap under the pressure of honesty. Crystal's story is a powerful reminder: your life is your most valuable asset. Protect it fiercely. Don't let your past dictate your future. What is the first boundary you need to set today? Crystal's journey was long and painful, but it delivered vital, universal lessons. It's time to talk about the 5 core takeaways that define her ultimate victory. This is how you reclaim your life and turn trauma into power. Lesson 1: your peace is non-negotiable. Never sacrifice your mental health for the illusion of family harmony. Lesson 2: truth is your strongest weapon. Expose manipulation. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. The moment you choose yourself, the toxic cycle breaks. Lesson 3: boundaries are self-love. No contact, no financial ties. These are not cruel, they are necessary. Lesson 4: financial independence is power. Never rely on a toxic source for your survival. Your future is built by your choices, not their permission. Lesson 5: choose your own family. Blood is just biology. True family is built on respect, honesty, and support. If Crystal can escape the Lewis family drama, you can escape yours. Your recovery starts now. We want to hear from you. Which of Crystal's lessons resonated most deeply with your own experience? Tell us in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories of self-rescue and triumph.